Hello lovely people, today I'm going to be doing the Choose Your Fellowship book tag.
Sophie Vlogs.
I first saw this tag on Ashley at Frolic Through Fiction's channel. It was created by Beth at Books Nest. They'll both be running the Tolkien Along readathon, which I haven't quite decided if I'm going to take part in or not because I have already read the books, but I might join in for a reread. I don't know, we'll see. But I thought this sounded like a fun tag, so I'm going to go for it. The first question is Frodo. I will take the ring to Mordor. A book you're not quite sure if you like or not. I thought I would start off with a really controversial one that loads of people love. Pirates of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I read this in, it was like May or June or something, and I waited 4 months before I filmed my wrap up on it because I've just been sitting with it because this is a book that I really wanted to love, and I had a fun time reading it. I just didn't love it, and I have some conflicting thoughts. I don't know if that wrap up is actually going to go live because I don't know how coherent it is. I need to do an edit. Essentially, I'm sure you've heard a lot about this book. It's about this fantasy world where there's a queendom and there are dragons and all these wonderful things. There was a lot I really enjoyed about this book. I definitely had some conflicting feelings. For example, I felt a bit conflicted on some of the pacing. Partly I wondered if maybe I wanted it to be like a duology rather than all in one, because I felt like there were some moments which felt a bit slow for me where we were given a lot of time, and then there were other moments which, like the final crescendo type moment in this, which I kind of felt like happened quite quickly and I kind of wanted a bit more time with. Equally, there were some perspectives that I wanted a bit more time with. There's one main perspective in this, and I did really enjoy that perspective, and I really enjoyed the romance and stuff like that, and I did really like those things. There were some perspectives, like Tane, for example, who I actually really liked and I wanted a bit more from, and I don't know. I feel a bit conflicted because on paper there's a lot in this that I will love, and then in reality it was fine and I had a good time, but I don't rate it as highly as I thought I was going to, and I know lots of people do, and lots of people that I am friends with really love this book, and it's like their favourite book, and I feel really sacrilegious, but it's how I felt. I will at some point post a wrap-up with more in-depth feelings that will be a bit like a emotional rundown, but I just thought that was the first book that came to mind. Question 2 is Sam. I can't carry it, but I can carry you. The book you'll always be loyal to. I've gone for a classic childhood favourite, Beyond the Deep Woods by Paul Stewart and Chris Riddell. This was my favourite series as a child. I always mention it in these sorts of questions where it's like a book, a childhood favourite, blah blah blah. This is set on the edge, which looks like this, which has this floating city and all of these deep woods and blah blah blah. This follows a character called Twig who's grown up among the wood trolls and believes himself to be a wood troll, but I think it is quite clear from the illustrations that he is not. He ends up straying from the path in the deep woods, and thus begins a wonderful adventure where he meets a variety of strange and wonderful creatures, and I absolutely love this book. I keep meaning to do a reread of the entire Deep Woods Edge series, but I just haven't quite got to it yet, but it holds a very special place in my heart, and even if on the reread it's not as magical to me as it was when I was a child, I will always remember how magical it was, and therefore I will always be loyal to it. Question number 3 is Pippin. What about Second Breakfast? A book you want to reread. Half my shelves are stuff that I want to reread. I either keep books that I absolutely adored or books that I really want to revisit at some point. That tends to be why I keep books. But I've gone for Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. I absolutely loved this book. It follows 12 points of view, which are largely Black British women. One point of view is from a non-binary person, and it sort of can be loosely split into sections of Girl, Woman, Other as you read throughout. And then these narrative perspectives all end up focusing around an event, and then as you read on you find out the ways in which these perspectives are all connected, and it's that aspect which is why I would like to reread this, because I think now that I have read the whole thing and I know how these perspectives are all connected, I would like to do a reread, because I'm sure that if you read it again with the knowledge of how everything is connected, there will be a bunch of stuff that I will have missed on my first time round. I just really love this. I have another Bernardine Evaristo to read. I'm going to try and explore her more because I think she might be a new fave, but this was one which I very much want to revisit fairly soon to just sort of re-immerse myself. The next question is Mary. We're going with you, Frodo. A book about friendship. I've gone for a non-fiction book for this one called A Curious Friendship by Anna Thomason. This looks at the friendship between Edith Olivier and Rex Whistler. So Rex Whistler was in the 1920s a member of the like Bright Young Things generation. So that's like the post World War One, pre World War Two, these like bright young things who were like artistic and wild and that sort of thing. Edith Olivier was a much older woman who became really good friends with the Bright Young Things crowd, and this is specifically looking at her friendship with Rex Whistler, who was a painter, but it also does look at just like her role within this group. And it was just a really interesting read because their friendship was one that crossed generations. It on the tin you think these like wild artistic people, and then just like this like, you know, aging spinster, as you could refer to her. But it was a friendship that I found really interesting, and just like a snapshot of a moment that I found really interesting. So that was what came to mind for this one. The next question is Aragorn for Frodo, a book with a hero/heroine to swoon over. I've actually chosen two for this because I couldn't decide between the two, because they are both like foundational swoon-worthy people that I didn't quite realise I swooned over when I was younger. So first of all is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Jo was a formative crush that I did not realise I had. Also heavily influenced by Winona Ryder in the film adaptation, for sure. There's just something about Jo which I know like a lot of people are drawn to, like not just like the writing aspect, but the like the way she navigates like feeling constrained both by like the roles of femininity and just like the path she is expected to lead in her life and that sort of thing. So she is just like a character that I've always found really compelling, but like definitely had a formative crush on without realising it. The other one is very similar to that. Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe by Fanny Flagg, which is set in the American South. And it's like this elderly lady in this nursing home who is telling this younger woman about her life. And essentially there's like a murder at the heart of this tale. But it's a really fab book, and specifically I read this, but I loved the film version when I was a kid. And I've forgotten the name of the actress, but she was also in Some Kind of Wonderful. And each time she definitely should have been explicitly gay in Some Kind of Wonderful, and that should have been a gay love story, fight me. But is she Threadgood? Again, slightly tomboyish, doesn't like to be constrained by the expectations on her gender. This, however, explicitly has Izzy and Ruth's relationship is acknowledged as being romantic, and they are a couple, whereas in the film, because it came out in the 80s, it is merely like hinted at and heavily implied. They weren't explicit with it. So I would like to meld like the film and the book together, because there were things that I think worked better on film than in the book, and vice versa, and if I could create like a perfect combination of the two. But yeah, they are both, I think I was drawn to them when I was younger for very similar reasons, but they are both characters which, like, to this day, I still definitely have a crush on. I have a type, okay? I have many types, but that is a definite type. The next question is Legolas, a book that still only counts as one, the biggest book on your TBR. And this is a book that I'm going to be reading and wrapping up in my autumn wrap-up part 2, which is coming at the end of October. I haven't quite read it yet, so it still counts. It's A Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss. It's the second book in the Kingkiller Chronicles. Pronunciation, Sophie. Yeah, this is a really iconic fantasy series. I know a lot of people really, really love it. I perfectly enjoy it. I'm really intrigued by this one because I know that it's quite divisive. Some people love it, some people do not love it. I'm just going to read it and see what I think. We follow Kvothe in this interesting fantasy world, and I don't really want to give you much detail on this because it's the second book in the series. I don't want to spoil anything. Next up is Gimli, Shall I Get You a Box? A short but fun read. I've gone for one that's very short but equally very, very sweet. This is Nino by Izzy Ward. This is a little graphic novel about Nino and her little dragon friend. And essentially, Nino wants to prove that she has what it takes to sit on the Council of Mages, but she is young and inexperienced and unconfident. And you just follow Nino and her little dragon as they, like, go on this adventure, and she finds her self-confidence and, like, proves herself. And it's just really, really precious. I really love Izzy Ward. They're an independent creator. I'm going to leave a link to their Etsy down below because I highly recommend you check it out. If nothing else, they sell some amazing pins, like a queer witch pin, and a sapphic sea witch pin, and a bisexual sorcerer pin, and those are only the ones that I own. There's a whole bunch more. And equally, when I ordered this, Izzy did a really lovely illustration of the little sleepy dragon. I don't know if you can see it, but I hope you can because it's precious. So yes, I just think that this is a really gorgeous graphic novel. I think the artwork is beautiful. I love the way that Izzy draws faces. I just think they have so much character in them. And I just thought that this was really, really sweet and lovely. And it's so quick. You can read it so quickly. But it's a really lovely all-ages comic, and I heartily recommend it. Next up is Boromir. They've taken the little ones. A series you never made it past the first book. I don't have the book to hold up, but I'm going to go with Shadow and Bone by Leah Bardugo. It was the first Leah Bardugo that I tried, and I thought it was perfectly fine. I didn't find myself hugely drawn in, so I was like, oh, I'll just leave it before I pick up the next book from the library, and I'll just see how I feel. And it's been a number of years, and I've never returned. However, I did really enjoy Six of Crows. I have Crooked Kingdom to read. I had a really fun time with Ninth House, so I don't think that Leah Bardugo is an author that I don't like. I just think that maybe that series is just not for me. Final question is Gandalf. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. A book that made you think about your life, the universe, and everything once you finished it. I have two again. Two. The first one is one that I've recently raved about in a book chat, so I will only briefly mention it. So that's Blue Horses by Mary Oliver. I've connected to this poetry. I'm going to link to the book chat down below where I talk about it because you get my really raw, immediate, unfiltered response to it. But a lot of these poems made me consider my place in the world and all that sort of thing, and I had a wonderful time, and I got really emotional. The one I'm going to talk about in a bit more depth is The Fisherman by Chigozie Obioma. The book sort of focuses on these brothers, and then this wise man tells them that one of the brothers is going to be responsible for the other's death, and this kind of sets off this chain reaction. First of all, this book is so beautifully told. I really enjoyed the way it was told, and it felt like the back is hope was a tadpole, the thing you caught and brought home with you in a can, but which, despite being kept in the right water, soon died. Father's hope that we would grow up into many great people, his map of dreams, soon died despite how much he guarded it. The poetry in this writing is beautiful. It really reminds me of oral folktale stories that are meant to be read aloud. Love it, love it, love it. But the thing that made me stop and consider the world is the element of fate in this. So these kids have been told this thing, but then how much of what happens is inevitable because it is fated to happen, and how much of what happens is the direct result of being told these things and then a self-fulfilling prophecy. How much of it is choice, how much of it is not choice. And I think that this book really tackles that in such an engaging way that after I finished it, and still to this day, I just stop and I just consider how much of what we do is inevitable, how much of it is conscious choices that we make. Can you break fate? Is fate even real? But if fate is real, can you break it? All these things. This is one of those books that really explores that, and I just thought that it was really wonderful, and I really want to read his other book. I just haven't bought it yet, but this was one that really stayed with me. And again, I could have chosen this for the books you want to reread, because half the books on my shelf I just want to reread, but it gave me a lot to think about, and I think it has a really interesting play around with fate. I would love to hear from you. What are your answers to these tags? Have you read any of these books? Do you have feelings and opinions? Do let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, I hope you're having the loveliest of days, and I will see you next time with something different.